Well, you heard Logan rattle off some of the pet projects in this bill, but wait, there's more. You also heard it bill's like 4,000 pages long. It talks about $65 million for, quote, necessary expenses associated with the restoration of Pacific salmon populations, $3 million for an LGBTQ plus museum in New York, $212 million for January 6 prosecutions, and $3.6 million for the Michelle Obama walking trail in Georgia. Yes, it is packed with pork, and joining us now to understand how this process works or doesn't is Sean Spicer, co-host of Spicer and Company. Sean, how you doing?
I was doing well until I heard you read off all that unbelievably horrible spending that is about to cost each one of us some additional money in debt that we're going to have to pay off, or probably our grandkids are going to have to do it. But that got me a little saddened.
I saw Congressman Dan Bishop tweet out last night, and I still don't want to believe this is true. There's like $200 million for gender equity programs for Pakistan, not even for the United States, for Pakistan. When people see this process played out, and we've been watching this happen over and over again for years in Washington, D.C., but this doesn't resemble the how a bill becomes a law process that we learned about in school, Sean. So tell us why this keeps happening in Washington, D.C., and why these omnibus bills keep getting bigger despite the objections from so many Americans.
Well, you're absolutely right. I mean, the process is supposed to work that there are 13 appropriations bills divided up by different areas. So defense spending, for example, that goes through the process. It gets conferenced, kind of like the Schoolhouse Rock version that you mentioned. Unfortunately, what's happened, and especially now that the Democrats are going to lose the House of Representatives, they're basically trying to jam all of fiscal year 23 spending into one bill. That's why it's called an omnibus bill. It's taking all of those 13 bills that I mentioned, putting it into one big one, and basically everybody gets to hang their little Christmas tree ornament on the bill and say, I want my park, I want my, the center that I've always fought for, I want the Michelle Obama walking trail or gender equity program in Pakistan, whatever it is, you add it in there, and everybody's bought into it because they've gotten something out of it. And that's the problem, is that the way that they sell this is you get something, you get something, you get something, and then we all get the bill.
Yeah. I would love to know who specifically.
John, I will say this.
Go ahead.
I know you mentioned this with Logan Raddick there, but I mean, just think about this for a moment. We're talking 4,155 pages. No one, honest to God, can look at themselves in the mirror and say that they read this bill. When Chuck Schumer's comments there, that a lot of this has been talked about. The devil's in the detail.
Yep.
And I think we are going to be finding out details for years to come.
And what Chuck Schumer said there specifically, I think, is what gets so many Americans angry. Oh, don't worry about it. It was handled by the Appropriations Committee. The rest of America doesn't really need to know what's in the bill. Trust us. We got it. Yeah, right. Let's also talk about this critical meeting with President Zelensky and President Biden today, and then President Zelensky headed to Capitol Hill. Now, we've heard from Kevin McCarthy, the incoming House Speaker, most likely, that Republicans will not sign off on a blank check. What do McCarthy, House Republican members, and even the American public need to hear from Zelensky tonight?
Well, it's a great question, because I think there are two camps. There are folks in the Republican conference that I've talked to that said, we're done spending money. We've spent billions and billions over there. We're going to send another $40 billion in this omnibus, like we're done. And then there's some who I think, and this gets to the heart of what Kevin McCarthy was saying, is we need some proper accountability and oversight. And I think that there's no question about that you're going to want to hear, hopefully, something about Zelensky, thanking the American people for being able to push back, because we do need to hold Russia back. We cannot let Russia be the aggressor, because it's not just about Russia. It's about China invading Taiwan and what that means to our opening up lanes of free trade and things like that to get our ships and to provide national security. I mean, this is much bigger than that. But I think Zelensky needs to talk about how we respect what you're doing, the sacrifice that you're making financially to send this stuff over, and here's how we're going to be accountable for it. Because right now, everyone that you talk to over there, even if they're the biggest Ukraine supporter, will tell you that there's a lack of accountability and oversight from this administration, and they want greater and stricter controls on what that money's being used for, and to know that it's being used for the purpose that it was sent there for. So I think we're going to want to hear a little bit about that. So he needs to assuage some of those members on the right in the Republican conference that are concerned about the lack of accountability and transparency when it comes to these billions of dollars of aid that we're sending over there in the form largely of weapons.
Yeah, you can easily make the argument on why it's so important that Vladimir Putin is defeated and pushed back and expelled from Ukraine, the future of Europe and really the world. You talked about China as well. It's hinging on this, but the accountability component is so important to the American public. And if we are going to continue our support for the war, that has got to be there. That's what you hear from so many members for Congress, at least on the Republican side. Sean Spicer, great to see you. Merry Christmas to you, Sean.
Merry Christmas.